So thank you, Anita, for joining us again today. Oh, you might have to remind me what week this is. I'm sure we run so fast. I think that we lose track of a week, but I know you don't. I know you're counting down. So I
Okay,
think we only have a
we're
couple
in
of
week
more weeks to
7.
go. Week 7. So we're almost there. Home stretch. Home
Home
stretch.
stretch.
Well, thank you for joining us and spending some time with us this morning. I know this is the busiest part of session for you, and thank you to our participants that have joined us this morning. For those of you that are new, I see that we have a number of participants on this morning that may not have joined us previously. This is just a recap of what has happened during legislative session this week. We also digest this and send this out in video form to our members early next week. So if they weren't able to join us today, they can review on Monday the happenings of the week 7 of legislative session. And just real quickly, I want to say thank you to our sponsors who are around both Christina and I, the City of Clearwater, Clearwater Gas, Duke Energy, Hillward Henderson, Morton Plant Hospital, and the Baycare Health System, and then Spectrum, Charter Spectrum. Happy to have your partnership. Because of your partnership, we are able to have a strong advocacy program and have Anita and her team represent us in Tallahassee. We have developed a strong relationship with our legislators and our elected leaders, both those that represent us and those that are in leadership roles that may have influence on policies that are important to us. And that's mostly because of your support of Amplify and our advocacy program, as well as Anita and her team. So thank you very much. With that, Anita, I would like to give you a chance to go ahead and get started.
Sure. And I think we'll be quick. Now that we're in week 7, subcommittees, a couple met this week, but most committees are no longer meeting. We'll have just a handful of what we call our big committees. They're kind of, the committees that a lot of bills get backed up in because they're the last stop before they hit the floor. We'll have a handful of those in both the House and Senate still meeting on Monday. But then after that, we do not have any more scheduled committee meetings. That doesn't mean that we won't have one pop up. If there's a bill that all of a sudden either chamber needs to get through a committee. But after Monday, they will just be on the floor going through all the way until sine die March 11th. So definitely getting close to the end. We do expect budget conference to probably start on Monday, if not Tuesday. Both the House and Senate have said they're getting close on allocations. They weren't quite ready to start budget conference this weekend. So they did tell their members to go ahead and go home, but to expect budget conference to start early next week. Just so everyone knows, and I know the budget is, certainly a big kind of beast, right? There's so much policy and funding that's in there, but it's the one constitutionally required thing that the legislature has got to get done before they adjourn sine die. And so, it can a lot of times be a big holdup in getting policy moving, especially that are priorities of either chambers, because they're negotiating things on the budget and trying to get to agreement on numbers. And by the time they agree and they wrap up budget conference, they have to wait 72 hours from that time when the full final budget that they've agreed on hits the members' desks. They have to wait 72 hours before they're allowed to vote on it off the floor. And so if this process gets a little bit backed up, that 72 hours gets backed up, and that's when you sometimes see, conference going late, session going late into the final day, or sometimes even, they have to stay an extra day to accommodate those 72 hours. So hopefully everything's running on time. They still have 2 weeks left. And they, like I said, they think they're getting pretty close to allocations to be able to start that conference process. The tax package, we shared last week that the House unveiled their tax package. It did go through its final committee in the House this past week. It'll go to the floor in the House next week. The Senate has not rolled out their own tax package. Last year, what they ended up doing is taking the House bill, amending it with some things that they wanted, taking out some things that they didn't, and sending it back to the House. So I do think that that's probably what will happen again this year. the tax package as it stands in the House, and we went through details last week, a lot of bipartisan support that, Democrats and Republicans seem happy with what the House has put forward. So definitely a great thing to see. That is not always the case, but a lot of great tax cuts in there that are going to be very helpful to the business community. Property tax cuts, we've talked about this in the past. It is a priority of the legislature to address property tax cuts for populations like our teachers, our first responders, law enforcement, child welfare workers. And so they did pass House Bill 1 off the floor of the House this past week. The speaker shared that it's the largest property tax cut in the history of the House to pass off of the floor. So very interesting to see what will happen with that. I do think it's something that both chambers and the governor definitely want to see happening. Certainly a little bit of concern from local governments on what that could end up to their bottom line, but, definitely their workforce populations that we need here. And if we can make things a little bit easier for them, especially after everything that's gone through the pandemic, the legislature thinks that that's something that we should definitely be doing. Something that the legislature so far has not been willing to look at. The governor did propose a pretty significant fuel tax decrease. The legislature has kind of looked at that, and you all know this probably better than so many other communities, is that the fuel tax is something that the tourists really are key providers in, right? They pay a pretty significant amount of that tax. And so, the legislature would rather look at tax cut options that go back to the residents of the state as opposed to the visitors that are coming in. So the governor has kind of stayed a little bit quiet on that since he unveiled that proposal, and since the legislature's pushed back on it a little bit. But as we kind of come down to these last couple of weeks, of course, both the House and Senate are trading things. The governor's office is trying to trade things to get what the governor would like. So it's not out of the question that it couldn't come up eventually. Visit Florida, of course, we're looking at legislation this year to extend Visit Florida. It is set to expire next year. The Senate bill has already passed the floor. That's an 8-year extension. Both the House and Senate bill were supposed to be on the House floor this past week. The House bill extended it for 5 years. The bills were temporarily postponed. We have been reassured by both Representative Cheney and Senator Hooper that it was for technical reasons. We are going to get an extension. Both believe that it will very likely be the 5-year extension. And while it's not quite as long as the 8 years, I think we can all say that we're glad we're not going year to year like we have in the past. Staying on tax issues and budget issues, there is a bill, like I said, that we've been watching for the last several weeks related to local tax referenda requirements. This bill is very, very scaled back from where it's been in the past, where Amplify has had concerns with it, and all it's going to do is say that if you're going to have a local tax referendum, it would have to be done at a general election. So that bill is on the House floor. It's in its last committee, or I'm sorry, it's past the House floor and it's in its last committee in the Senate. So it does look like that might be moving forward. Related to, of course, our beaches and our communities, and always trying to look out for the impact that our communities have related to flooding. The legislature has been moving forward this year a statewide flooding and sea level rise bill. This bill would create a chief resilience officer for the state and put a lot of plans in place for the state to more seriously be looking at flood mitigation efforts. And putting a plan into place for that. It is on the House floor and ready for its last committee in the Senate. So again, looking like something that could very likely end up passing and going to the governor this year. Just for everyone's radar, property insurance has been a very big topic of conversation. I think, we can all agree that it's something that impacts our businesses. It's something that, impacts affordable housing, because property tax rates property insurance rates are going up so significantly. There are package bills that have been moving in both the House and the Senate. It's our understanding that the governor's office is getting very involved in those bills, trying to figure out what they can do to address rising rates, and a lot of the fact that a lot of insurers are actually leaving the state, leaving residents with just Citizens as an option. So I do think we might get some more property insurance reforms coming this year, and the House, the Senate, and the governor's office are just working out exactly what those final details are going to look like. Local ordinances, as we've shared before, it is a Senate priority to address local ordinances that impact our businesses negatively. They're calling it the preemption to end all preemptions. This would allow businesses to essentially sue local governments if an ordinance is passed that results in that business losing more than 15% of their profits. Again, it's a priority of the Senate president, so it has been moving in both chambers. It has already passed the floor of the Senate, and it moved through its final committee in the House this past week. Definitely some concerns from local governments on the impact that could have. But so far, a lot of the major business group, associations have been supportive of those efforts. The legislature does feel that that 15% margin is something that's high enough that the local governments aren't going to be subject to, a high level of lawsuits, but it's something that will, ultimately impact or protect the business community. I think with that, that's kind of a quick high-level rundown of everything going on. Like Amanda said at the beginning, we've got just 2 weeks left. So there's going to be a lot of high-level negotiations going on between the House and the Senate. And of course, we'll be watching for amendments on the bills as they go back and forth between the two chambers to make sure that there's nothing in there that could negatively impact our community. So glad to take any questions.
Thank you, Anita, and thank you, Christina. I appreciate Christina asking for Q&A in the chat, or certainly using the Q&A function. So if anybody has any questions, we'll give it just a minute. But Anita, thank you for that thorough overview of what the final weeks are, and we know where it is today could be very, very different next Friday, right? So a lot of changing, a lot of evolving that will happen over the next week. And thank you so much for all your work to kind of chase it all down and keep track of it and figure it out and follow it through. So we appreciate everyone joining us this morning. If there aren't any questions, and I don't see any, we thank you for your time, Anita. And again, thank you for your partnership, and thank you to all of our sponsors for making this program possible. So with that, everybody have a wonderful Friday and a great weekend.